Hello, it's December 2nd, 2023. This is Political Dharma, and I'm Alan Zundell, back after a couple of weeks off, and happy to have you joining me today. On today's show, I'm going to have two news stories I'll be discussing, both related to the 2024 presidential election. In the first story, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in a new Harvard-Harris poll is at the very top of the net favorability ratings. Let's listen to a clip from News Nation with Chris Cuomo talking to political consultant James Carville.
Harvard-Harris is a real outfit, okay? So, it's not like this is some agenda-driving poll company. To beat Trump in a raw score favorable is almost impossible, okay? Because people who like him, either, the like-hate is so high. Bobby Kennedy, 52%. The net favorability poll, okay? Now we're going to get love-hate reckoned in there, right? He is plus 25. That is extraordinary. The third one is the one that really matters, which is if you vote today, okay? So a snapshot in time. Where are we if you vote today? RFK is pulling Ross Perot-like numbers.
Right now, he's just an idea, a vessel that's not named Biden or Trump, so he's gonna do well. You can't, and if he doesn't do well, your friend Cornell West, that was on here earlier, he'll get more votes than people think too. I mean, when you have this level of wrong track numbers, this level of dissatisfaction with the candidates, you're gonna have some weird stuff out there. And what you're seeing is just that. This is some really weird stuff.
In a little bit, I'll be looking more closely at that poll to see what else we can learn from it. But my other story is that Jill Stein, two-time Green Party presidential candidate, has once again thrown her hat in the ring for 2024. Let's listen to a clip from her video on her X channel announcing her run.
The political system is broken. The two Wall Street parties are bought and paid for. Over 60% of us now say the bipartisan establishment's failed us, and we need a party that serves the people. I'm Jill Stein, and I'm running for president to offer that choice for the people outside of the failed two-party system. We'll put solutions to the crises we face, crushing inequality, endless war, and climate collapse. And we'll put these front and center in this election and on the ballot across the country.
Later in the show, I'll be talking about why her campaign is worth keeping an eye on. But first, let's turn to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and take a closer look at that public opinion poll. The Harvard Capps Harris poll was conducted across November 15th and 16th using professional methods of public opinion polling. As Chris Cuomo said, RFK Jr.'s favorability ratings topped the charts. If you're watching the video version of this show, the chart on your screen will be hard to grasp at a glance, so I'm going to zero in on specific parts of it. First, let's look at just the top part of the second graphic, which shows the net favorability rating of several public figures. The first column of the graphic shows the overall total of favorable opinions toward a figure, combining both the favorable and very favorable opinions. RFK has the highest total favorable rating, with a total of 52% of registered voters having either a favorable or a very favorable opinion of him. Donald Trump's total favorability is at 51%, which means that given the margin of error, Kennedy and Trump are virtually tied in overall favorability. The second column shows total unfavorable opinions toward a figure, combining unfavorable and very unfavorable opinions. If you look at that column, Kennedy's unfavorability is much lower than Trump's. Kennedy's unfavorability is at 27%, while Trump's is 17 points higher at 44%. Finally, the third column shows net favorability, that is, the total of favorable opinions minus the total of unfavorable opinions. Kennedy has the highest net favorability by far, his 25% being more than 3 times higher than Trump's 7%. Go down to Joe Biden, and you see that Biden has a net favorability of a miserable minus 2%, the worst of the three candidates. Kennedy's net favorability is even more impressive when you realize that the second highest net favorability rating, that of Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, is just 14%. Kennedy's net favorability of 25% is thus nearly twice as high as that of the candidate with the next highest net favorability. Let's look now at the top of the first graphic, which lists the political figures in the same order, but breaks down the results more fully. If you go from left to right on the bar after each name, deep blue shows how many had a very favorable opinion of the person. Light blue shows how many had just a favorable opinion. Light gray shows how many respondents never heard of the person. Dark gray shows how many had no opinion of the person. Pink shows the unfavorable opinions, and red shows the very unfavorable opinions. Here you see for Donald Trump that he has a high level of both very favorable and very unfavorable scores. 30% having a very favorable opinion of him, shown by the dark blue section, and 34% a very unfavorable opinion of him, shown in the red section. As Cuomo said, with Trump, people either love him or hate him. With Kennedy, you could say that few people love him or hate him, with 17% very favorable and 13% very unfavorable. But a lot of people, 35% of them, do like him, giving him a at least favorable score. If you look down at the rest of the list, you can also see that most politicians receive the high level of very unfavorable opinions. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Hillary Clinton all have high, very unfavorable ratings, similar to Trump's. The graphic also shows that only a tiny sliver of people haven't heard of Kennedy, but a large number of people don't yet have an opinion of him. So far, what we've seen is that Kennedy has a net high favorability, not because a lot of people love him, but because a lot of people like him and very few people hate him. I'd say that's because he's not identified in people's minds with either major political party, which means he can avoid the hyper-partisan reaction that people have to most of the other politicians. That's going to be a problem for him in states that lean heavily towards one party or the other in the general election, because it means he's going to have to beat a candidate that has support from a lot of partisan voters who highly favor that particular major party candidate. As I've said in other episodes, I think he's going to do better in swing states that don't have a heavy tilt towards one party or the other, which means that he might have a major impact on the election, although I don't think those states would be enough to win him the Electoral College vote. So much for that. You can look at my previous episodes to see me break that down. Let's look now at some of the other charts from the Harvard-Harris poll. This chart gives another indication of why people respond well to RFK Jr. 2/3 of registered voters say that the country needs another choice for president other than Biden and Trump, as opposed to the only 1/3 of voters who say that Biden and Trump are good enough choices. On the right side of your screen, you see a breakdown by party affiliation. In the column on the far right, you see that 3/4 of voters not affiliated with either major party, that is independents and those who favor other parties, minor parties, want another choice. That's not very surprising. But the column on the left shows that Democrats want another choice at a similar level, 71% of them. In comparison, only 58% of Republicans want another choice beyond Biden and Trump. My guess is that Republicans are more satisfied with only 2 choices for president because of the high number of Trump lovers among them. Fewer Democrats are that enthused with their frontrunner, Joe Biden, which indicates that RFK might attract more interest from Democrats than from Republicans. Along the same lines, this chart shows that almost 3 out of 5 voters say they would consider an independent candidate in the event that Biden and Trump are the major party nominees, which looks likely at this point. The 58% of voters who would consider an independent candidate is up 5 percentage points from the previous month, that is October, and probably has to do with RFK's decision to run as an independent. The breakdown by party shows once again that more Democrats than Republicans would consider an independent candidate. I just wish they hadn't included the word moderate in their question, asking if people would consider an independent moderate candidate. People will have different ideas of what a moderate is, which may or may not fit Kennedy. He does have views that don't fit either major party, which could show that he's somehow center between them, but he's passionate about his opinions, and some of them lie outside the mainstream public opinion. So is he a moderate? That term is really irrelevant to the question of whether people would vote for an independent candidate, so I wish they would have dropped it. But let's move on. Okay, let's look at how people would vote if they voted at the time the poll was taken and their choices were Trump, Biden, and RFK. The pie chart on the left includes people who say they're unsure how they would vote. It shows Trump would win with 41% of the vote, with Biden at 34% and RFK at 17%. 8% are uncertain about how they would vote. As Chris Cuomo said, RFK's percentage is in Ross Perot territory, which means unusually high for a non-major party candidate. If you force those who are unsure to make a choice, that is the pie chart on the right, the results change just slightly. Trump picks up 3 percentage points, Biden picks up 2, and Kennedy picks up 4. But look at the charts at the bottom of the page that show breakdown by party, and you'll see something interesting. I said earlier that RFK might attract more interest from Democrats than Republicans, and this chart bears that out. But notice that although 20% of Democrats would vote for RFK if you force them to make a choice, compared to 14% of Republicans, there's also a high number of Democrats who would vote for Trump, 12%, compared to 7% of Republicans who would vote for Biden. This shows that the problem for Democrats is not that RFK Jr. will, quote, take away votes from Biden, end quote, so much as Democrats' dissatisfaction with their front-running candidate. In other words, the problem is Biden and not Kennedy. Let's take one more look at that favorability chart and segue to Jill Stein's candidacy. The pollsters also asked about Jill Stein and Cornell West. Cornell West, as you know, if you've been following my show, was previously running for the presidential nomination of the Green Party, but then left the Greens to run as an independent. After that, Jill Stein then made her announcement that she would seek the Green Party nomination. What we see from the Harvard-Harris poll is that most voters have either not heard of these two candidates or have no opinion of them. Look at how large the gray sections of the bar are for both of them. Otherwise, given the margin of error, their favorable and unfavorable ratings are very similar, about 7 or 8% for very favorable, 14 to 16% favorable, 10 to 12% unfavorable, and 10 to 11% very unfavorable. West has slightly more favorable and slightly less unfavorable ratings than Stein, which gives them a net favorability of 5% compared to Stein's net favorability of minus 1%. Given the margin of error and the fact that so many voters have no opinion of either of them, I wouldn't make too much of this, but I would speculate that if voters do see Stein more unfavorably than West, it's probably because Democrats remember her as a factor in their loss of Michigan in the 2016 presidential election. Stein's campaign has a better chance of going the distance than Cornell West's campaign because of the resources a political party like the Green Party can bring to Jill Stein's campaign. Let's listen to her talk a little bit about this topic on a recent interview by Jordan Cheriton on his Status Quo News.
The reason, I threw my hat into the ring was after having supported Dr. West's race, which is powerful, really important, and I'm grateful that he continues to have a voice in the race. But when he gave up $4 million worth of ballot lines, it made me really worry, will there be a pro-worker, anti-war climate emergency agenda front and center in this election and on the ballot across the nation? Because if you're not on the ballot across the nation, you're a footnote in this election. You maybe have a very powerful moral authority, but you're not going to hold power to account. For me, I've kind of been working on this for about 20 years to build our power to fight back. And, political parties are very flawed institutions, like human beings are flawed, entities as well. And we need them, unfortunately. Our human brothers and sisters, and we need political coalitions right now, enduring political coalitions, which is what political parties are. So, I didn't want to see that go to waste. I want to see us fight. I want to see us on the ballot, and I want to see us preserve what we've built and build from there.
I'll say what Jill didn't say outright, and that is that Cornell West is going to have a very hard time getting ballot access across the nation, enough to get even much of a, much interest in the news. And so as a result, his candidacy is probably going to relatively soon fade away and have little impact on the final election. With RFK Jr., though, because of his name recognition and financial resources, he has a much better chance of getting on the ballot, at least in most of the states, if not all of the states, and therefore he can have a significant outcome on the election. So in the future, I'm going to be following both RFK Jr. as well as Jill Stein. But RFK is not going to build an enduring, at least presently, he's not creating an enduring organization to run candidates for other offices or for future elections, including the future presidential elections. Because Jill Stein is doing that, I think her candidacy is important and is worth paying attention to. Let's go back to the Harvard-Harris poll one more time on the question of who voters would choose to vote for in the election if it was held in mid-November. We saw previously that in a three-way race, 41% of voters would choose Trump, 34% would choose Biden, and 17% would choose Kennedy, with 8% unsure of how they would vote. Now, if we include Cornell West and Jill Stein in the mix, we find that West and Stein are virtually tied at about 2% each, taking a tiny sliver from Biden, a tiny sliver from Kennedy, and about 2 percentage points from those who were unsure how they would vote. What that tells me is that Stein has quickly caught up to West in terms of her political support, but that neither of them is making much of an impact so far. Let me end with one final news story that also has relevance for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign. In a November 20th article published by Politico, Ana Canizales reported that the Commission on Presidential Debates has set the dates for their televised events next fall, and more importantly, they've set the criteria for a candidate's inclusion. A candidate will have to get at least 15% support in 5 designated public opinion polls, which it looks like RFK will do easily if his numbers continue to hold up. To be included, the candidate will also have to be on the ballot in enough states to hypothetically win a majority in the Electoral College, which RFK may also be able to achieve. That remains to be seen, but as I've said, he has the resources to get close to that. It could mean that for the first time since Ross Perot ran in 1992, there may be 3 candidates in the presidential debates for the general election in 2024. Of course, this assumes that Trump and Biden are going to be willing to debate Kennedy if there's a presidential debate that includes him. This is in doubt because neither of them, neither Trump nor Biden, has been willing to debate their primary rivals for their party's nomination. So maybe we'll have the spectacle of Kennedy alone on a stage addressing 2 empty podiums. Now, that would be interesting. Anyway, that's it for this show. Thanks for listening. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and come back again next week to see what's up as we continue on following this presidential election and other interesting things that come out of the news. Thanks. Goodbye.
With ease, I see the chains are breaking. We gained our focus. The moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.